Reactions pouring in after the Vatican's release of a document this week on the faithful and Freemasons. The Holy See says Catholics are forbidden from becoming Freemasons.
When you get high up into the degrees, there's actually anti-Catholic ceremonies.
Intellectuals, politicians, clergy wanted to get together and discuss civics and religion and social issues and science in an atmosphere that was entirely outside the control or the monitoring.
So what makes a secret society? Well, the first thing is, it isn't necessarily secret. In fact, in most cases, it isn't. That is, there's some public acknowledgement that it exists. So let's just take as a simple example the Freemasons. They don't hide their existence. I mean, they've got a sign on the outskirt of every town telling you that there's a Masonic lodge there. There's a sign on the lodge. So generally, what makes a secret society secret isn't that no one knows about it, but what goes on inside the organization. What they do go to considerable lengths to hide, or go through the motions of hiding, is what they do in the lodge. Whether you're an entered apprentice or whether you're a master, big part of the initiation is always you swearing, cross my heart and hope to die, which actually comes, that's what, if you ever betray any of the secrets of the organization, the rituals or anything else. So what's the secret? What is it you're being sworn to disguise in that case?
Freemasonry is an interesting organization, and the Freemasons, or its members, are quite peculiar indeed, and I can say that because I was one of them. It's a male-only organization, 6 million worldwide, 4,500 lodges worldwide, all reporting up to their local Grand Lodge. It is a custom, it is a tradition by which men pass through stages to reach a level of understanding and insight, or at least that's what it claims to be. When it was created is something that is constantly debated. The 3 degrees, the entered apprentice, the fellowcraft, and the master mason, the key is in the name, master mason, are supposed to mirror what a stonemason would go through when they were becoming more accomplished in their craft. So the conventional view is that Freemasonry came from a world of craftsmen, stonemasons in particular, and that kind of evolved into this male society for the betterhood of men.
Jesus was not a Freemason. He was a stonemason.
In society. So if you join, there's no joining fee. It doesn't cost you anything. The only stipulation is that you believe in a supreme being. It could be Allah. It could be Jesus Christ. It could be anyone that you want. They call it the grand geometician of the universe, or the all-seeing eye. And that's the only requirement. Now, Freemasonry today is really just an excuse for 85% of the 6 million Freemasons to go out and spend the night away from their wife having a drink with the boys. But in the past, and even just a few decades ago, Freemasonry was still a place where you could gain benefits in business, preferential treatment, and you didn't even have to have a badge. You had a secret handshake that would tell people that you were part of the club. Today, Freemasons are just a shadow of their former selves, And they are the scapegoats for any sort of nefarious association that the Freemasons may have in society. Everyone instantly is triggered when Freemasonry is mentioned because, I believe, up until the last couple of decades, at least the higher echelons of Freemasonry yielded great power. And those of us who were, just master masons and finding our way in the various degrees, we never saw any of that. I will say that what is unappreciated is that there's no charitable organization on the planet who gives more money to charity than the Freemasons. They never ask anybody for money. They just give money out of their own pocket, and they direct it to the local community. So for that, they continue to deserve a lot of credit. But gone are the days where they're the organization that's driving the elite in business, the elite in media, to do whatever it is that the world economic agenda needs to be. Today that's been replaced with the Bilderberg Group, with the Illuminati, with the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization. Those organizations have kind of taken the limelight away from Freemasons, who used to more covertly dictate those same kind of policies.
So, secret societies aren't secret. They can be, but that's not a part of it. Another important element is that secret societies are selective. You have no right to belong to them. They choose you. So you might want to become a Freemason, you might want to become a Rosicrucian or any of these type of groups, but it's up to them to accept you. And there's therefore a system of vetting which goes on. You are chosen. This is one of the things that makes it important, because you are chosen. And that becomes a big part of the appeal of this, because that's what, most of us spend too much of our lives trying to do, is to be accepted. Now, you want people to like you. You want to have friends and associates. You want to become. That's why people join cults, isn't it? People join cults because it apparently provides them with the human companionship that they never got anywhere else. If you've then been chosen, if you have the honor, the privilege of being part of this secret society, you then have to pass a series of tests or initiations. You have to be found worthy. The whole point of taking those oaths isn't that there are some sort of grand secrets to be hidden, but it's a test. This is part of the initiation. What you do is you swear you won't talk. If you do, there's no horrible fate that's going to befall you, but you will then prove yourself to be unworthy. You've broken your word. So what you're buying into is a relationship within an entire organization which spreads out into the rest of society, and you do each other favors. Then one person put it, what secret societies are in some way, at the lowest level, they can be more than this, is a favor bank. The other thing you find common in secret societies is that nobody knows everything right off the bat. There's always a hierarchy within this. Why are there initiations at each step of the way? Because there's something to be learned. So you only get part of the story in the first initiation, a little bit more in the second. Only when you're a master, supposedly, do you get all of this. But see, even that's not completely true. Because beyond a master mason, there's all the rights. There are all the higher degrees you can earn. It's not even technically a level in Freemasonry itself, because they will always insist that once you reach the master, that's actually as far as you go. And the rest of it are just sort of adornments. And there are different rights. There's the York right. There's the Scottish right. There's even an Illuminati right. And what all of them are is they're just these kind of different merit badges, each which has an initiation that you go through. The most common one is the Scottish Rite, which has 32 degrees, and then an honorary 33rd degree for some sort of special service. So there's always this kind of higher level you can go into, and in each of these levels, you're supposed to be acquainted with more allegories. You're supposed to be able to. A lot of these things are simply things that you contemplate, that they're all part of a spiritual education in which the mysteries are gradually revealed to you. In Freemasonry, the two things you're never supposed to talk about in a lodge are religion and politics. It's a simple reason for that. The lodge is all about fellowship. And the quickest way to start an argument is to start talking about religion or politics. Therefore, Freemasonry, in a sense, has no religion. You're supposed to believe in a superior, supreme being. There's discussion that the way that Freemasonry conceives of God as the great architect of the universe, which it's what you want it to be. If you are of the Christian persuasion, you can believe that they're talking about the Christian God. On the other hand, if you're like Christianity, you can pretend that it's some other God. You can think that it's Lucifer. It can be any God you want it to be. So it's a bit like, Alcoholics Anonymous, which also, by the way, is based on Freemasonry. You can be a Christian, you can be a Satanist. And as long as you believe, as long as you want to interpret either one of those as the great architect of the universe, it works.
There are many theories about the origins of Freemasonry. One being that it comes from the Knights Templar. The other is that it comes from Egyptians. Now, I'm open to both of those, and there are situations that lend itself to those being possibly true, but I haven't seen any solid information to tie that together. But I do believe that another alternative has perhaps some more credible information that ties Freemasonry to the ancient times, and that's the Roman Mithra cult. So let me tell you my own theory about the origins of Freemasonry, and one of the keys to that explanation, or at least that theory, is the symbolism. You have the all-seeing eye. In Egypt, you have the Eye of Horus. The all-seeing eye, it's on the American $1 bill. It's everywhere, right? But it kind of has a nefarious association. When in fact, it's just the presence of God who is seeing and experiencing everything. That's more or less the symbolism that they share with you. Now, the other is the sun. And I feel at some point in time, whether it was the Council of Nicaea or elsewhere, that the Son of God, i.e. Jesus Christ, may have been confused with the sun in the sky of God. Now, who worshipped the sun? Well, one of the worshippers of the sun, again, a very prevalent image in Freemasonry, were the Romans and the Mithra cult. And this gets really interesting because the Romans in the 2nd, 3rd century, they are in the UK. The UK is where Freemasonry appears to have really formed in the way that we know it today anyways. And it was all about the god Mithra, a sun god that goes back to pre-Zoroastrian times. So we're talking like 1000 BC. Now, hold on for a moment, because what's the most common symbol in the Mithra tradition? It's the god, the sun god, Mithra, holding a bull in one hand and slitting its throat with the other, thus representing the bull being Taurus, the death of Taurus, and the passage of Taurus to Pisces. Now, at the same time, there's one other indication that the ancients knew about precession, because that shows the knowledge of precession from one constellation to another, and that's in Dendera. The calendar on the ceiling shows all the constellations. So at the same time, the Mithra tradition and the Egyptian tradition or showing signs of procession. And the sun god is something that is portrayed heavily in Freemasonry. So let's take a look at the similarities between the Mithra tradition and Freemasonry. They're both male only. They both have a rectangle-shaped temple that has set positions. In Freemasonry, it's junior warden, junior deacon, senior deacon, grand master who guards the door, the inner guard. Same thing in the Mithra tradition. There's chairs where key positions sit. There's also room for spectators to view. There's a secret handshake in both. Festive meal afterwards. And down the hall is the Lodge of Instruction. They both have it. So you have these great similarities between Freemasonry and the Mithra tradition, which was brought from Iran and possibly Egypt into the UK, where later Freemasonry is born. So I think that's an interesting possibility for the origins of Freemasonry. And it confirms to me, or at least suggests, that there was a time when Freemasonry kept and secured incredible knowledge that to this day is still not known amongst the masses. So, what happened on the second day of creation? All religious texts, Hebrew, Egyptian, Inca, they all talk about the second day of creation. God created the firmament to protect the earth and keep it dry from the watery abyss beyond. That is, we live in a snow globe. That's a whole nother conversation about a firmament. Now, that's an interesting subject for sure, and it explains a lot about why we haven't been to the moon, which is 244,000 miles from Earth, but the firmament, or the Van Allen belt, that's about 100,000 miles. So how come we can't get to the moon? That's a whole other conversation. But this is portrayed on the regalia, where you have the all-seeing eye. You can see it on George Washington's regalia, and you have this sort of bending kind of separator from the all-seeing eye above and what's below. And what's below are the planets and the sun. And the thought is the sun is not zillions of miles away like we're told. The planets are not zillions of miles. They're all in the firmament or within our realm. Now, that may sound crazy to some, but if you research the firmament, it's a fascinating subject, and the Freemasons appear to have understood it, whether it's real or imagined. They portrayed it on their regalia.
My name is John Wedger. I'm a retired Metropolitan Police detective. I came to prominence in the UK for my stance as a whistleblower for speaking out about the deliberate cover-up of child abuse and child prostitution mainly within London, but later on it spiraled out to within society. When I was in the police, I had a colleague, and he was Asian, and he couldn't make it to become a detective. They wouldn't let him, and that may be a prejudicial thing. So he was encouraged to join the Freemasons. So he did. He joined the Freemasons. All of a sudden, he was allowed in. He took his detective exam. He passed it. He carried on. He progressed quite quickly through Freemasonry, and he was encouraging me to do likewise. They had nothing I wanted, and I never had the money for that sort of stuff anyway. But his career very quickly blossomed. I met him 9 years after that initial conversation, and he said to me, "Are you in the Masons?" I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "John, don't join. It's devil worship." And he told me about one of the rituals when he went to join a section of Masonry called the Knights Templar, and he was made to swear an allegiance to an entity known as Abaddon. And Abaddon is a biblical demon. It's a demonic overlord to the pit of hell, to the fiery pit of hell. And it was at that point he realised that Masonry has its roots in Satanism. And in order to progress, mainly in things like the police and that, sometimes that's a trade that you're offered. But I warn people, it's not a trade to take. You should not be doing it. It's demonic, and it will lead to no good. The children are always needed, because when you get to Satanism, they are the life source. The life and death is in the blood, as it biblically states. The offerings are that of the blood of the innocent, which is what the demons want. And that's why there is a need for the dysfunctionality in society, for the abuse to continue, the sexual deprivation to continue, and ultimately the sacrifice of children, because it does go on. It does.
The Bible talk about it.
And it's so well hidden.
In
I should, in
Leviticus.
terms of full disclosure, perhaps point out that I am not now, nor have I ever been, a Freemason or a member of any other secret society. No oath-bound orders, no fraternities. Never wanted to be. And the reason I never wanted to be is because it always seemed to me that anytime you join an organization with a hierarchy, there's going to be someone telling you what to do. The one thing that I dislike more than anything else is having other people telling me what to do.
Tell them.
Therefore, secret societies have no attraction to me because they violate my exaggerated sense of self-importance.
That's why I drove trucks at night.
At the same time, that's what fascinates me about them.
No autonomy.
Why do you do this? I mean, why do you submit to this authority? Why do you do these apparently, seemingly nonsensical things?
For earthly gains.
Why do you believe something that doesn't really seem to have any other rational reason for you to believe it, and I can't even figure out what exactly it is you purport to believe it? But it becomes this framework that, you know, Freemason denies it has anything. We're never political. We don't involve ourselves in politics. Well, you know, you're not supposed to. But then explain to me why. If you look in revolutionary movements, political movements, you often find those based around either a membership which is largely composed of Freemasons, or in fact stemming out of particular Masonic lodges themselves. How did that happen? I mean, how was it that Freemasonry often seems to have an intimate connection to revolution, and particularly to revolutionary conspiratorial? So I have heard American Freemasons.
Quick commentary. Why did the KKK burn crosses? Why did they hate African Americans, and why did they hate Jews that was a part of the Catholic Church? Could it be because the Catholic Church rejected Freemasonry?
In a public setting. In fact, at the initiation of naval cadets to become naval officers, there was a fellow from our local Scottish Rite, okay, he's Freemason, also a member of the Scottish Rite, and he was proudly talking about the fact that the United States, the American Republic, is a Masonic republic, that it was founded by Freemasons on Masonic ideas. So at that same event, I was sitting next to a person who I also knew was a Freemason. So I asked him later, I go, this guy just stood up there and said that, the American Revolution was a Masonic revolution and our whole country was founded on Masonic principles and Masonic ideas. Do you agree with that? He goes, God, I think he was kind of overdoing it, but that was just his personal view, As a Mason or anybody else, he can express that view. It's not my view. I don't necessarily hold that. So here again, just a little case in point. One Freemason doesn't accept what another Freemason publicly said about the role of Freemasonry, but nor does he condemn it. He simply argues that it's an individual's point of view as to how important it would be. They look at the American Revolution and they see this. I look at it and I don't quite see the same thing, but he's still my brother Mason in this case. Okay, if you go back, if you count up, all right, so we've got signers of the Constitution, we've got the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
They probably were Masons too.
How many of them are actually Freemasons?
All of them probably.
Turns out, a number of them, but not most. Maybe you can't go in and you can't look at the Continental Congress and go that everybody sitting there was a Freemason. Some were, a minority were. So signers of the Constitution, roughly about a third were Masons. But all of that is, you always have to say roughly, because you really don't necessarily know who is and who isn't. You only remember, this is a secret society, it's a private organization, and those records are not public documents. So the only way that you know someone is the member of the secret society, generally, Freemasonry, again, just being our operative example, is if the person publicly announces it.
Like them black Prince Hall Masons.
It's not clear that the signers of the Declaration of Independence, I think it's something like 9 people are definitely Freemasons because they admitted that during their lifetime. Another 9 or 10 are probably Freemasons. Why do we say probably? Well, because they associate with other people that are Freemasons. That's a tip-off. And in terms of the statements or pronouncements they would make, it seems to be fairly consistent with that. Best example of that type of thing is Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is not actually recorded as the member of any Masonic lodge. That is, he cannot be affirmed as being a Freemason because you cannot find him mentioned as the member of any particular lodge. Yet, if you look around, you will find that American Freemasons have routinely, since the 19th century, counted him as a brother, even though they never present any records to show that he was one. And the way that was explained to me is that, well, we count him as a brother because everything that Jefferson said, all of his announced views conform to Masonic ones. So we might consider that he was a Freemason not because he was admitted and sworn in a particular lodge, but because everything that he believed in was consistent and reflective of Masonic ideas. So we've made him a kind of honorary Mason. Others argue that he was a member of the lodge, but he just never acknowledged that in some way. Jefferson was kind of a secretive guy in a number of ways, so it's entirely possible that he might have belonged. But he is counted as one, nevertheless. So there you can get this other. What about people who aren't, again, who never actually join Freemasonry, but are influenced by its ideas and take on, who would then sort of follow these ideas, who would effectively follow Masonic practices without ever actually being a member. It's possible that one could do that. So if you look at the American Revolution, what it boils down to is this. It was not a revolution in which everybody involved was a Freemason. Most people, as we can determine, were not. There are some people who definitely were. There are some people who probably were. There are other people who might have been, but still, that's not everyone. I mean, even if you include the might-have-beens in it, you might get 50% of the people at the Continental Congress were Freemasons, but you can't prove it. But on the other hand, how many Freemasons were there in revolutionary America? They had a population of around 3 million, and maybe, 500,000 adults. So remember, to be a Freemason, you have to, one, be male, no women allowed, except in those lodges that do allow women. There were a few of those. But generally speaking, it's a boys' club. Generally, you have to be 21. Some variation in that as well. And you also have to be unencumbered. You can't be an indentured servant, one form or another. So if you look at the number of the few 100,000 men in revolutionary America who would have qualified to be lodge members, how many of them actually were? Well, there might have been anywhere between 2,000 and 6,000 Freemasons in revolutionary America. So they're highly concentrated. So there are many more of them involved. So I think what you can come down to is that the American Revolutionary Movement it's not a Masonic movement, but it's one which is heavily, disproportionately influenced by Masonic members.
The Illuminati, like many secret societies, has one foot in historical fact and another foot in, perhaps, mythology. Now, we all know the story of how the Illuminati was found in Bavaria in 1776 on May Day, which which is really interesting. Labor Day, Adam Weishaupt wanted to call the organization, so I've been told, Bees, but the name was already taken. So he chose the Bavarian Illuminati. 1776. There are those who have told me that what we see today in the sky, in terms of constellations, which only occur over long periods of time, are the same as what we saw in 1776. This was the time of American independence. There was a lot of revolution. Now, did the Bavarian Illuminati choose bees as their symbol? No, they chose an owl. Now, that is really interesting to me as we talk about some of the mythology associated with the Illuminati. Today, the Illuminati is tossed about as an explanation for any nefarious sort of behavior of an individual, a corporation, or anybody that's behaving, a bit in a globalist fashion, if you will. But the Illuminati and the owl are central to Bohemian Grove, and Bohemian Grove has the care of cremation ritual that's conducted beneath a 40-foot statue of an owl, the same symbol that the Bavarian Illuminati introduced hundreds of years earlier, and a symbol, the owl, that they have throughout their degrees. So we see the Illuminati, founded in 1776, and they stole many of the key members of Freemasonry. They were kind of competing for having the global thought leaders on their side, not the Freemasonry side, not the Rosicrucian side, and they largely succeeded. So today, when we look at Bohemian Grove, who's in attendance? Presidents, prime ministers, current and future and past. Henry Kissinger, you have the Clintons, you have Tony Blair, Richard Nixon. All
I know
these
Nixon
people
evil ass in there.
in a ritual that's so pagan under this 40-foot owl. And we know it's real. Alex Jones broke in, snuck in, videotaped it. What are these world leaders doing, behaving in such a nefarious way? Is it the modern day version of the Illuminati, or is it something else?
So, what does Illuminati mean? It means enlightened. Enlightened to what? And he said, John, this can never, ever get out.
How horrific is that kings and queens and presidents are involved? But why are the children being trafficked?